Welcome everyone. I'm glad you have decided to take this course and I hope you enjoy the next 8 weeks. My name is Mr. Neville and I will be your guest lecturer throughout this course. I would now like to cover the goals of this course. Over the next 8 weeks we will examine the major theories of international relations. We will discuss the major participants and organizations in the international system. We will compare the tools nations use to pursue their goals. We will cover different global issues. And finally, we will discover the different perspectives on the issues, and we will look at the challenges facing the world. I shall endeavor to make this class relevant to you and explain how these issues can affect your life. For this week, you will need to read Chapter 1 in your textbook. Two of the core concepts in international relations that we will cover are that of purpose and power. There are many different types of actors in international relations, including states, like the US, international organizations, like the UN, non-governmental organizations, such as the Red Cross, bureaucracies, and individuals like you. They will have a purpose or set of goals that they are trying to achieve. These goals can be shared with other actors, but they can also be competing. This leads us to power. This can be a complicated subject, and it is something that we shall return to throughout this course. The simplest definition is that power is the ability to achieve your goals. This includes the ability to get another actor to do or not to do something. There are generally considered 5 different types of power. 1. Coercive power. This is the ability to make someone do what you want to through force. This is most often done internationally with an army. 2. Institutional power. This power comes from an authority which has rules and regulations. Power must be given to these bodies. We will discover that there is little of this in international relations. 3. Persuasion or soft power. This is the ability to get someone to do what you want without force. This could be because of shared goals, but it can also be through other forces. 4. Structural power. This is when a system or set of beliefs can be set up in such a way that it benefits you and will get others to act in ways that you want without them even realizing it. An example of this could be capitalism. 5. Finally, we have collaborative power. This is the power of working together. I am sure you can all think of examples of these different types of power in your own life. If we look at our list of possible actors, international relations is a huge field and could at first seem overwhelming. In order to help ourselves view the world as well as the specific issues with it, we must come up with some general explanations on how things work. These are known as theories. By having a theory, we can apply their principles to any particular issue or scenario, and we can determine why things are happening the way they are and what the outcome could be. The assumption is, therefore, that no particular scenario is unique. Instead, they are examples of a larger pattern. A theory is a general explanation that should be able to cover a wide range of scenarios. It will be able to predict future events and advise the best course of action in a given situation. These final two are possibly the most important for policymakers. Now, some theories will be better at explaining certain situations than others. Furthermore, just because a theory cannot explain everything does not mean it is wrong. Now, there are different ways of categorizing theories. This can be done by looking at their level of analysis. This identifies the different focus point of the theory. They can look at the individuals, the states, or the system. If a theory focuses on the individual, it will look at human nature and the role that individual leaders had in a certain situation. State level will focus on the nature of countries to see if they are possibly more war-prone or peacemaking. Finally, system-level analysis looks at the nature of the international system and how it forces the state to act in certain ways. This final level is possibly the most useful for prediction, as if the system remains constant, it should be easier to predict what a state will do.